Hello Summoners and welcome back to another ProGuides upcoming changes video. My name is Christoph and today I'll be going over all of the upcoming changes that are planned for patch 9.14, but just as a disclaimer, 9.14 will hit the servers 1 week later than the usual, which means that a lot of these changes are still being tested out. All of the things we'll mention today can be found in the PBE right now or on the Riot dev boards and Twitter accounts. Please keep in mind that nothing is set in stone and changes can be made before 9.14 hits the live servers. Also, before we get into the video, I want you to check out our site, ProGuides.com, using the link below. With our Pro Pass, you get exclusive access to Pro courses for a limited time only, bundled with our Teamfight Tactics Pro Pass as well. On top of that, we have a brand new feature called InstaPro, which provides unlimited 24/7 on-demand coaching from the best of the best. Over 100,000 gamers have used InstaPro and have ranked up significantly, so don't miss out on the opportunity and go rank up now. Alright, let's start off with the top lane. Tahm Kench has been one of the most problematic top laners in the game recently and was in dire need of a nerf. His high damage, tankiness, and roam threat made him a clear S-tier top laner in the meta. However, our prayers have finally been answered and Tahm Kench will become much less annoying in patch 9.14. His passive will see a ton of nerfs. Spells will no longer deal bonus damage based off stacks, and the stacks themselves will no longer give Tahm Kench increased damage. However, to compensate for these nerfs, the base 1.5% max HP damage buff will be increased to 2.5%. Next, his Q, Tongue Lash, will have its cooldown increased during the mid to late game and will no longer hit enemies in a wide arc right in front of Tahm Kench. On top of that, stunning an enemy with Tongue Lash consumes all stacks of acquired taste, and the slow amount has been nerfed by 20%. However, these nerfs are followed by a small compensation buff to Tongue Lash's slow and stun duration. His W will no longer stun targets for 0.25 seconds after spitting them out, and the nearsighted debuff on enemies will be removed as well. As a trade-off, it can now be used on red and blue buff. Maybe a Tahm Kench jungle incoming? Lastly, his E will have its gray health storage nerfed significantly, but will now heal 100% of the gray health instead of 20 to 40%. The cooldown on his E will now start when the E shield expires, and will also see a 5-second CD increase at rank 1. Poppy has been doing pretty well in the meta, and she's looking to become even better next patch. Her W, Steadfast Presence, will now ground and slow an enemy by 25% for 2 seconds if she stops their dash. The duration on her W movement speed and cooldown will also see buffs in 9.14 as well. These changes are going to make Poppy really strong, so you should expect to see her being played more often in the coming weeks. Renekton has been one of the best top laners in the game recently and was only slightly under the S tier in terms of power. However, it appears that the Balance team is looking to buff Renekton in patch 9.14, and these changes look like they'll push him to either the S tier or even the S+ tier. His W, Ruthless Predator, will now have a shield destruction technique added to it where he'll remove any shields on his target if he casts W with 50 Fury or more. This new passive ability is going to be so powerful against champions like Camille, Poppy, and Riven. If this change goes through, the Renekton is going to become a must-pick-or-ban champion. Kled has held a decent stance in the meta and is looking to receive one simple buff in patch 9.14. His Q will now reduce all healing on the target by 60% for 5 seconds if he successfully yanks them. Although this change is really simple, it might have a huge impact on his win rate. We'll keep you updated on how strong he becomes this patch. There are currently no changes planned for the jungle, but before we jump into the mid lane, if you do main mid and you want to see huge improvements to your rank, then I highly suggest checking out High's course on ProGuides.com using the description link below. Alright, now for the mid lane. Akali has been a balancing nightmare for Riot Games. However, it appears that the Balance team is willing to give her another shot and is buffing her in patch 9.14. Her Q, 5-point strike, will have its AP ratio increased by 10%. Her W, Twilight Shroud, will see a few changes made to its cooldown start time, and the CD of the ability itself will be nerfed to 25 at all ranks. The energy restore rate has been increased to 80 at all ranks, and the true stealth and duration extension has also been removed completely. Her E, Shuriken Flip, will have its missile base damage lowered at all stages of the game, but will now have an AP scaling. Lastly, her ultimate, Perfect Execution, will have its cooldown increased by 20 to 30 seconds depending on the rank. Although there are a ton of nerfs weaved into these changes, these are an overall buff to Akali and will help her more than hurt her. Ryze has been another balancing nightmare for Riot Games, but is only looking to receive a few bug fixes for patch 9.14. His stance in the meta will remain pretty much the same. Fizz is looking to receive a small change to his passive, Nimble Fighter. The damage reduction on this ability has been changed from a scaling flat amount to 5 plus 1% of his AP against all sources of damage for a maximum of 50%. This passive will be insane during the later stages of the game when you have close to 4-digit AP numbers. Ahri is going to have one of her old nerfs on her Charm reverted in patch 9.14. Charm will now cancel in-progress dashes once again, but is followed by a small compensation nerf to its bonus damage duration. This means that Ahri will be rewarded for timing her Charm properly against her opponent's dashes and will have a better chance to outplay them. On top of that, it becomes exponentially easier to land your other abilities if you stop them mid-dash. Ahri mains will love this change. Cassiopeia's W, Miasma, is one of the most awkward abilities in the game. If you cast it too short, then it spits 500 units away from your cursor and can single-handedly lose you a duel. To make her W more satisfying to use, its minimum cast range will be decreased by 400, but is followed by a compensation nerf to its cooldown and slow. Her E, Twin Fangs, will have its healing changed from a flat amount per level to a percentage of her AP. On top of that, the cost of this ability has been changed to 50 at all ranks, but will now only heal 25% of the damage dealt against monsters and minions. LeBlanc is receiving a small change this patch, which will now grant true vision on targets hit by ethereal chains. Although this buff seems rather small, it can be game-changing versus champions like Twitch and Akali. Granting true vision after using her chains means that you can follow it up with a quick QW, ultimately dealing more damage. Katarina is receiving a small change to her ultimate Death Lotus. Death Lotus will now cut healing by 60% rather than 40%. This change is very minor and is in line with the buffs made to Grievous Wounds this patch. And lastly, for mid lane, Swain is getting a complete rework on his kit this patch. His passive, Ravenous Flock, will have its Soul Fragments passive reworked, and it will now give him permanent soul stacks, which increases HP and mana every time he collects one. His Q, Death's Hand, will no longer restore 3% of his maximum mana when he kills a unit, but will now always pierce through minions and stop on impact when it hits enemy champions. The cooldown and radius has been nerfed slightly, but the angle between bolts is increased by 2. Swain's ultimate, Demonic Ascension, will have its health threshold to cast the second ult removed. And Swain can now drain all units for HP, including minions, monsters, and stealth targets. The second part of his ultimate, Demon Flare, will no longer deal damage per soul fragment, but instead deal damage equal to how much health Swain has drained during the first part of his ult. There has also been a confirmation that Sylas is receiving some changes right now, but they aren't live on the PBE. Make sure to click that sub button if you want to be notified of these changes when we release our patch rundown video. There were no changes made to 80 carries, so let's get straight into supports. Lux has been one of the most OP supports in the game and has been in our S+ tier for multiple patches now. But for all of you Lux haters out there, she's finally getting nerfed. Her W will no longer double the shielding on returning shields, but the duration has been lowered by 0.5. The shield amount has also been increased slightly, but is still an overall nerf. Her ultimate, Final Spark, will have its reset mechanic removed and the cooldown lowered during the mid to late game. The AP ratio has been increased by 5% to compensate. Overall, there are a few good nerfs, but our analysts predict that Lux will still be very powerful in patch 9.14. Pyke was recently changed to shift his playstyle from a solo laner towards a support. However, the changes made to his kit were a little bit too much, and they've impacted his role in the bot lane as well. To make sure that Pyke's support returns to his solid stance in the meta, his E, Phantom Undertow, will now stun minions again, but still won't do damage to them. His ultimate, Death from Below, will have its ratios buffed significantly and will deal 50% of the damage to enemies that he doesn't kill. This will definitely help out Pyke's support while also keeping his role as a solo laner in check. Leona will now reduce incoming damage by a flat amount up to 50% while she uses her W. Her magic resist and armor gain from her W Eclipse will be nerfed as a compensation. On top of that, her R, Solar Flare, will no longer empower her basic attacks. Not only do these changes empower her role as an all-in engager, but also helps Leona become that unkillable threat even when Aftershock is on cooldown. Much like Renekton, Blitzcrank is also being given a shield buster mechanic. His R static field will now destroy enemy shields and clear movement impairing effects on Blitz. The cooldown, however, has been nerfed from 60 seconds to 90 seconds as compensation. His W Overdrive will have its movement speed bonus and duration reduced, followed by a nerf to its attack speed. The slow decay after using his W has also been removed, and overdrive can be recast up to 3 times to refresh the duration and stack the movement speed effect. At the end of overdrive, Blitzcrank will now be rooted for 1 second. The changes to his W are very interesting because you'll now need to decide if getting rooted for a few seconds is worth the speed. High risk, high reward. Karma and Morgana will be receiving the LeBlanc treatment and will now grant true vision of the enemy while using focused resolve and soul shackles respectively. However, the true vision doesn't help them nearly as much as it does for LeBlanc, but is still a great change altogether. That's it for our upcoming changes video for patch 9.14. Let us know what changes you're most excited about in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed watching this video and want to see more, then please hit that sub button. Also, make sure to check out ProGuides.com using the link below if you want to see huge improvements to your rank. Thank you guys so much for watching. Good luck in your next few games, and we'll see you on the Rift.